Alright, so I've had the desire to make this video the whole time I've been playing through this game, because if you go on YouTube or on like any sort of gaming review site, people are tearing the fucking piss out of this game. If you go on the subreddit, it's almost like a complete opposite, where people are sucking the game's dick. There's some people who don't like it, but most of them are just ranting and raving about how the game is actually that good and other reviewers are wrong, and it's driving me fucking crazy. Because I don't know, the thing about it is just driving me insane. If you can't tell, this is unscripted. If you can tell in your heart of hearts that this game is not the best and definitely not worth $60, but it's not horseshit either, this video is not for you. And that's how I feel about the game too. It has a lot of problems, like the aiming being broken, or the HUD not updating in real time. Usually it lags a little bit. But that's besides the point of today's video. I wanted to go over some of the insane critiques I've been seeing for this game and break them down and try to better articulate what they're trying to say, because a lot of them are correct. Almost, they're just saying the wrong thing, if that makes any sense. Rather than get too far into explaining that statement, I'm just going to get right into it and you'll understand immediately. Starting with the characters. People say these characters look and act like characters the Saints would bully in the previous games. No. I'll start with the generic ones, because people really say that, especially the fat ones, look ridiculous, and it's more so the fat ones, honestly. But the fat ones in particular, the references to Saints Row the Third, which is the golden goose everyone's comparing this game to. So I don't really get that. And not only that, you can unlock a bunch of silly outfits, so if you don't like them, you can just turn them off and put on a sillier character in its place. So moving on to the actual meat and potatoes at this point are the main character Saints, Nina, Eli, and Kevin. I don't agree with the take that they look like Saints that would get bullied in the past, or Saints that would not work, because they look a little silly, but Saints have always looked a little silly, especially in Saints Row 4. But ever since the second game, the characters have worn more extravagant outfits, and that's fine. They can be designed. I don't care if they look realistic. They can look cool. And the new Saints look kind of like that. I don't know, like, for example, Shandy's Saints Row 2 outfit, or Oleg's just entire physical stature. They're a bit exaggerated from what you see in real life, and that's fine. When I see like Eli and Kevin, I'm like, oh, well, I've seen like party animals and nerds, and they look kind of like that. But in all the other Saints Row games, I see people like Pearson, like, oh, he's like the stereotypical gangster, and then he becomes like the stereotypical high life mobster, I guess. He's got like a little flat cap and a big flashy suit on. So the outfits don't bother me, and their personalities, they could work. But the problem is the writing. It's not the personalities inherently. Like, Eli is a nerd. So is Matt. So is Kinsey. And he's very business focused. But when they start writing Eli to be like, oh, I can't shoot guns, or when they start doing that MCU, like that fake MCU banter that everybody's trying to do nowadays with every single fucking piece of media to try and be funny and shit, and it just comes off unnatural with all the characters, that's when the characters come off as like really bad. Like, I was watching this cutscene, you can hear me groaning in the middle of it because it made me feel uncomfortable.
Assuming he hasn't been extrajudicially murdered by now? Yes.
What can go wrong?
I mean, I could die. But let's be positive.
Scenes like that come off as lacking humorous delivery. But when these characters are written to their strengths, like with the Nina's car quest line or the LARP quest line, not only is the game genuinely charming and fun, but so are the characters. Got one of these fucking animations when you kill someone with a silly weapon where they sit down and spin around with their middle fingers. Me and my friends were fucking dying about that when we first saw that. It was so out of nowhere. It's like, they kick around like a little kid. But yeah, the characters themselves, they aren't too far from the actual Saints of yesteryears. Like, there's been party animals in the Saints, like with Zemos. There's been hackers and more computer nerdy types in the Saints, like Kinsey and Matt. And there's been more normalish characters, like Julius. It's just that the writers are trying way too hard to have relatable dialogue with them in like cutscenes where they aren't just talking normally. Every Saints Row character is fucking crazy. Let them be crazy, and they'll have normal conversations. And don't make them try to be like, oh, I sit on the couch just like you when I get sad. No. If I was depressed and I was a psychomaniac, I'd be like, man, I'm sad. I'm gonna go out and kill my neighbors now. That's what I would do. And then I would write the supporting cast to bounce off of the protagonist in that way, so on and so forth with each other. So yeah, characters themselves, not cringe. The writing for most of the cutscenes comes off as, how do you do, fellow kids, levels of awkward. The negative reception to the new characters is the most consistent criticism I've seen of this game. As we move forward, I just want to remind everybody that I'm not ignoring the story because I'm unaware of it. There are issues with it. It's just that the reception towards the story being short and kind of lackluster in its execution is, in my opinion, completely warranted. And this is more so a reminder of the point of this video, to just kind of respond to the poorly communicated criticisms of this game, rather than actually critiquing the whole game and giving it a fair review of every single aspect from my perspective. So let's move on to the missions. Being always shooty, Rudy, McTooty, and drivey car simulator. People say this is a bad thing, but almost every single mission in this series has been one of those too. They're given extra floors to stand out at times, like with the fire ATV mission in Saints Row 2, or the sniper and drive a car with a tiger inside missions from Saints Row 3. Whichever way they dress it up, almost all these missions are just driving to checkpoints or shooting at things. What people should be saying here, though, is that it's not the problem of these missions being all shooting and driving, it's just that there's nothing else. There's usually some extra missions like the Septic Avenger or the Fight Club. The lack of anything besides shooting and driving in the new Saints Row game is felt. Hidden history and the photo ops, as fun as they are to walk around the city and actually pay attention to what's going on around you, which is probably one of the biggest draws of the Saints Row franchise, do not count or make up for the lack of sillier activities. Speaking of that open world, calling it completely dead is an exaggeration. The issue here leans more on the technical side because there are random events they just don't spawn in, so I don't want to get too into it, but I can't really blame anybody for believing that, because other than the really interesting world map they actually set you in, there's not a lot of NPC interactions going on in the world, especially when compared to Saints Row 2. You also can't go AFK and have your character turn to an NPC when you're not using the controller, which is a cute little feature that added a lot of life to Stillwater. Hopefully whatever bugs are causing this to not really appear if you're going too fast is fixed soon. And now let's go over some quicker points before the video is over that I've seen people contest with. Customization being terrible. What are you fucking on about? Yeah, it's not as good as Saints Row 2, but it's way better than what we've been having previously. I saw one YouTuber even say that they liked going into the plastic surgeon store, and they hate that now you can do wherever you want. Like you can customize your character wherever you want. And that shows me how out of touch this fucking community is with its own wants, because every time I played Saints Row 3 and 4 with friends, they fucking hated having to go to a plastic surgeon just to quickly change their hairstyle. Having the ability to put on coats and put on underwear and socks and shoes and gloves and all this shit is way better than being restricted to whatever kind of combination the developers made in the previous Saints Row 3 and 4 games. Like, I don't know what the fucking issue is here is. It's not as good as Saints Row 2, but it's not bad. It's better than most games out there on the market with character customization features. And for the people who say that vehicle or weapon customization is somehow worse, it's exactly the same as the previous games, except there's more options. Like, if you like going through preset models and a couple different skins, that's still there. So these two critiques, no sense to me. The gameplay being boring is another one I see, because you can use 2 weapons throughout the whole game. Yes you can. This whole series is based off of player choice. You're not supposed to pick the other weapons if you don't use them. For people who hate that you can't do takedowns on random NPCs anymore, the gameplay has been evolved in a certain way by having health chunks and actually using the takedowns as something to restore those health chunks. So if you could do them willy-nilly, it would defeat the whole purpose of the system. Not only that, there was only like 6 animations in Saints Row 3 and like 4, so they got old extremely fast and they barely did any damage. I'd much rather have a small charge, which only takes like 3 kills to fill up back all the way to 100%, and they get a free instant kill, rather than throw someone with the force of 1,000 Supermen and see them get up a couple seconds later. Oh, if you hate all this shit, by the way, the abilities, the guns, the fact that enemies have health bars and the shields and shit, you can change everything in the accessibility settings, so they could just turn it off. Yeah, I think that about does it for all the more bizarre and somewhat miscommunicated problems with Saints Row, the new one. This video was a lot longer than I thought it would be in terms of length, not actual production, because I wanted to really explain each point well enough and then move on, instead of just being like, hey, this is dumb, let's move on, laugh at it. I want this game to improve. I want to see the developers watch this and get my feedback and actually implement it into the game and maybe patch out some of the stuff too. Because I'm not happy with paying $60 for such a half-baked game. It's fun, it appeals to me as a diehard Saints Row fan, but it's kind of fucking shit and needs to improve and get its act together if it wants to keep people invested in the game and the characters and all that stuff. So yeah, give me your feedback on this video in the comments below, and if you see any advertisements on this video, that's not going to me, that's YouTube doing it. So I'll see y'all next time, and hopefully you avoid getting spoiled for an upcoming video game release. Ta-ta for now.